Okay. Well,
Transition it.
oh, transition it. There we go. Luke's the professional here, and I am not. All right, well, here we go. Brother Ickes, we're talking about the book of Acts here real quick, and we were just saying a few things. I thought people would benefit from that. We haven't gotten, I haven't continued with the book of Acts right now because I like to be preaching in front of my people, right in front of their faces, have them there with us as we go along. And it just, I believe the Lord has led me to do what I'm doing right now, the different things that I'm preaching. But, and we'll get back to all the things that we're working on as soon as Old Paths meets together again in person. But you were saying something about, we were talking about how there's so many hidden jewels inside there, and we were talking about the salutations in the book of Acts, and how there's something there. Go ahead and tell me what you were going to say about that. Hang on one second, brother. Hang on one second. We're having a problem with the audio here somewhere. Do you know where it is? Yeah, but I don't think it's you. I think it might be us. So let's just see what, let's see what's going on here. Yeah, that's right. Okay, they're saying no sound. Can you hear it on yours, Luke, when you're over there? Check it and see. We'll see what's going on here. Could someone... Yeah, you can. Yeah, you can just keep talking. We'll figure it out here. Yeah, they said they can't. Yeah, my wife said she can't hear it either. So we want to get this down, get this fixed, whatever. No, and it's not you. It's something here, I think.
Yeah.
So we got to figure it out. But we will. Let's see.
There. Try it now.
Okay, there's me coming in. How about you talk, Brother Ickes? He is talking. I can't hear him. Does mic 2 have to be on or no? Luke, does this 2 have to be up over here?
No.
No? Okay. Hang on. Let's see. Nope. Oh, Andrea said she heard fine, but I don't know if she heard Brother Ickes, so
Oh.
my wife couldn't hear it either. Let's see what we can do here. There you go. Now I can hear you, but I don't know if they can. I can hear you, but I don't know if they can.
Speaker.
Andrea said she heard both of us fine. That's weird, Andrea. Keep talking, Brother Ickes. Yeah, how's that doing over there with still no authorized mic? Said he still can't hear anything. So we'll get it. We'll get it figured out here. Yeah, you guys are like really in need of lockdown over there, right? I mean, nobody's even said in your state that there's no. See, I think part of the pushback, brother, is the fact that like over here where we're at, over in Iowa, over in other parts of the Midwest, we don't have. No, and it doesn't look like we're probably going to that bad. The numbers just came out today again, and ours seem to be starting to dip. I mean the number of people transacting it or whatever are catching it is there, but the recovery is pretty strong. We're gonna have extra beds. They're already saying it looks like we're pretty much, just not really affected like some of the inner metro areas are around the country. Right. I want to be like you when I grow up. Whoops, he just went quiet.
You can do is just turn up these.
Right.
Just turn the speakers and just record it through speakers.
Speakers are all the way up on 100. Hang on a second.
Do I need to turn up my gain maybe on my
Oh, you got to run it through there.
Let's record both you through there.
What about now?
Can
What
you
about
all
now?
hear him?
Can you hear it now?
Let's see.
I've got my gain almost all the way up. I don't know if that.
Oh no, it's not you. It's us, brother.
Okay, all
It's
right.
it's the way this is coming down. Let's just see how it works. If they're able to hear you, and that's fine. It'll be a little wonky probably, but
Yeah, I'd hate for your listeners not to be able to hear me because I mean, who's going to listen to that more than 5 minutes?
yeah.
I mean, it's one-sided conversation.
Well, they're used to that. I do it all the time. Can they hear it? Okay, they can hear it. Yep.
Okay, that's wonderful. Okay,
Okay,
great.
and it's coming through my speakers, which is fine, but it'll work, and then it'll record right, and then we'll put it online later too.
Yeah.
But it looks like they got them. Yep, they can hear, so that's fine.
Okay, great.
I'll just
Wonderful.
have to be good and not interrupt you all the time, because
Well, I'm just glad you have I don't have a platform. You have a platform, so whenever you invite me on, I'm really appreciative of it because
yeah.
I'm in the middle of the desert. Nobody knows who I am.
Well, it's been a long time since we've been able to get together. So one good thing of Corona is you and I have been together for like a year. We were going to do some more shows, and then you just got slammed with work.
I did. Yeah, I did. Boy, I was enjoying that Catholic series too. But I had been working 7 days a week and then trying to do the ministry that I have. And on top of that, I still have 5 children at home. I have 7 total, 2 grandkids and all that. So I just have a lot going on. But things are slowing down at work aside from COVID. And then COVID hit. And so now I've got time to do whatever I want. So it's great. So it's been really good. It's been good for me, been good for the family. So under the circumstances, they're not good, but there's been some blessings involved for my home. That's for sure.
Yeah.
But the COVID thing, like I'm 1 county south of the 3rd hottest spot in the country, which is Detroit. I'm 35 miles from Detroit, where I'm at right now. And so my perspective is probably a little different than people out where you're at, or most of rural America. They're wondering what's going on and why. And I totally get that. I totally 100% get that. But here, I haven't left my property in 3 weeks. So that's not a problem. I don't feel like I'm confined. Actually, it's almost like a vacation for me. So
Well, you've had to kind of, you don't really have a choice in the matter. You kind of have to do that in that sense because of what's going on. So I think it's good that I have your perspective on this because I'm pretty libertarian guy, and I know you are too for the most part. I'm not libertarian on social issues and things, that are just plain wickedness and vile. Although I do believe people have a right to be stupid if they want to be.
Exactly.
And
I
as
believe
long
that too.
as long as there's stupidity, doesn't, as soon as their stupidity endangers the life of other people, that's no longer their stupidity. That's a crime in that sense. So I get that from that standpoint. But I think having you on here, what it does is it kind of helps in some ways because, I want to give your perspective, and you and I are, we have like kind of two different styles.
Yeah, but I think we complement one another pretty well.
I think so. I think over the years you've been a blessing to me in helping me kind of to, use some logic and understanding with some things and kind of slow down a little bit on a few things, and listen a little bit and just kind of watch. So I'd like to think, and the Lord did that to me when He allowed me to get depression, anxiety, and a few other things. It caused me to kind of like slow down a little bit and take my time a little bit more and not be the first one to jump the gun and get on the bandwagon of something stupid that's gonna be bad. So I think some of that has been helpful, and I think also, I think some people don't know this, but you were very influential in me going street preaching, and because what happened was with street preaching, all I saw was like the Reuben Israel guys, and I had seen all those guys, and I was like, there's no way in the world I'm doing that. Those people, I mean, I don't go by this 1, 2, 3, repeat after me, banging on doors type, the way they do it. A lot of the fundamentalists were doing it. But then I saw the other side, and I was like, well, here's Reuben Israel and these other guys, and they're just a bunch of stinking nuts, man. A lot of them are. I mean, they're out there, waving tampons and calling women all kinds of ungodly names and all kinds of stuff like that. And I'm like, I don't want to do that. Then I saw a video of you and your crew out in
New York, when we were in New York.
No, it was the one where the college is.
Okay, Ann Arbor.
Ann Arbor, yeah. And I saw that, and I was like, okay. So here it is. Here's these guys in Ann Arbor. Well, that's not what I'm used to seeing, but that I see the biblical need to do. Like, that made sense to me. So that's when I contacted you, and another brother and I, we went up there and preached, and that was the first time. And then the Lord really used that, to get me to evangelize, to make full proof of my ministry in that sense, and to get out there and do that. And it was different than what I had seen. So, God used the way that you are and the way that you do things. He used that to influence me in a major way, and it impacted this ministry and the lives of many people, because of that. So I think, like you said, you don't have a platform and you don't talk about a lot of these things out there like that. But God used you to kind of, help me to do more with that. And I appreciate that. I'm grateful for that. The Lord.
I'm glad you're able to do that and reach out, because even if I did have a platform, that platform would have disappeared over the last several years because of how much I was working. So,
yeah,
it's been great for you to do that. And yeah, with the street preaching thing, I mean, I had to learn the hard way too. I mean, because I don't know how to explain it, but some of that rebel stuff is kind of appealing to younger men. And so, of course, I was one of those at one time. And so that even I've preached with those guys, every name you've named there, I've preached with them. And it didn't sit right with me, but I didn't know very much at the time, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. So what do I know? Those guys have been preaching for years before I had. And so that was the only kind of way I understood it to be, but it didn't sit right with me. And, but then because our church decided we wanted to go out every week on Saturday at 2:00, it took us away from event preaching and just made us just preaching in general. So messages were general, which was so much better because you don't know who you're preaching to. So, as opposed to say preaching at a sodomite parade or preaching at some rock concert or whatever. So you're assuming at those events that these people are all sodomites, or they embrace it, or they're all, in the flesh or whatever. And you can get off on a tangent and preaching on a subject when you're just supposed to be preaching the gospel.
Yep.
So when you go out and preach just generally to the public, you don't know who's in front of you. Half of them could be saved for all you know. So it kind of like refines your preaching a little bit. And then, of course, you get in trouble with the authorities. And then you have to learn all the legal stuff, and then you learn all that, and then wisdom starts to kick in, because you don't always have to win every little argument with the police. You can give a little bit, when it's not going to change what you're doing. Unless they're asking you to go 4 miles away.
Well,
and you
I
preach in the
learned
middle
that.
of a field, you know what I mean?
I learned that the hard way too, because, I learned that, you don't have to show up to every fight you're invited to. And
Right, exactly.
with cops, you can it's like, they'll think, well, I don't have to show you my ID, and I don't have to, and I know I don't have to, but I'm not hiding.
I've done it.
I'm not
I've
hiding.
done it.
I know.
I've fought that battle. I've been arrested for that before.
Yeah.
And I was right, but I caused myself a whole lot of grief having to fight all that stuff. And for what? All I had to do was identify myself, and then I would have just kept on preaching. So if I'm there for preaching, what do I want to do? Be some legal scholar on the corner, or do I want to preach the gospel? Well, I'm there to preach the gospel. So if I have to submit to something that might be something I don't have to do, I think it's wiser to do it in submission to that request, so that you can stay focused on the reason why you're there, which is to preach the gospel. So, some brethren think that you're just supposed to always draw that line in the stand and punch out every, confrontation that you have. And to me, wisdom has to kick in at some point, right?
Well, you have to decide whether you're there to fight or you're there to
Right.
preach.
Exactly.
And if you're there to fight, then you're going to be like Reuben Israel and those guys, and you're gonna,
Mhm.
you're going to be, more antagonistic, and that's the kind of thing you're there for.
Right.
To be
And their goal is
provocative.
different. And
Right.
Their goal is different. Their goal is not to preach the gospel. I've had debates with those guys about why they're even going, and it's to rebuke the world. That's what they'll tell you. I'm sent by God to go rebuke the sodomites. Well, no, you're not, because that's not what the Bible says. The Bible says to go into all the world and preach the gospel to every creature.
Right.
It doesn't tell you to go out and make a scene and preach against every subject you think that you need to address because of the country you live in.
I had these guys, brother. I had these guys that remind me of Reuben Israel and those guys. I was, and I'm not just using Reuben's name. I'm just using Reuben's name because it's easy. You
The
can
famous name, right?
Yeah, Jesse Morrell or any of the other heretics you want to, just add them. And I'm not speaking for you. I'm speaking for me. So if they give you grief or whatever, but I don't really care. They can give me as much grief as they want. And I know you don't really care about that much, but
No.
but the point is that, when I was at the state fair this year, outside of the state fair, there were these guys, and they were preaching for the banning of circumcision. And they weren't preachers, but they were in that sense. But they all dressed up, and they had pictures of bloody body parts.
Yeah,
and
right.
and they dressed up like a bloody body part. And that's how they conducted themselves. And I actually, because they were interfering with my preaching, I just preached to them, and I preached them so they'd leave. And I did. They basically left.
That's good.
And that's what I did. I just kept preaching to them until they left. Because all they were doing was stopping everybody else from hearing the preaching. And there was nowhere for us to really go. That's the state fair doors. I just kept preaching the Bible so much to them, they got so uncomfortable that they left.
Yeah, good. Yeah,
and it was-
because they end up becoming the enemy of the gospel, not the lost person.
Right.
Well, what do you expect lost people to do?
Yeah, exactly.
But people that say they're saved don't even have enough sense. So,
It's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Anyway,
amazing.
so we'll move on here with this COVID thing here, COVID-19. Now, you were saying a little bit, and let's talk a little bit about your area, because now people can hear you a little bit. Now, okay, I'm in Minnesota, all right, and let me see. Let me look something up here real quick. Our governor's getting ready to. He's going to do an announcement here pretty soon, and we'll see what he does with it. But we have 1,154 total confirmed cases. I mean, we've got, I think, 30,000 people tested probably. or something like that. It's just an astronomically high number. And then 1,154 confirmed cases, 632 recovered cases, and 39 deaths. Last time I checked, the death they were all in their 80s almost. Okay, so I don't know if you could look and see and tell me your numbers in Michigan there, where you
I'm
guys
looking
are
it up
at.
right now.
Yeah, and give me an idea of just what they are. Because while he's looking that up, I want to say something to you. You know, if you're in different parts of the country, you're going to see this differently. And I beg you to use some sanity when you're dealing with people out there. I can't have the same look. All right, I got a man right here that I trust, okay? I trust Brother Ickes. I know him. He's stood by me through some pretty crazy things that went down. He's been through a lot of things over the years. I know he's not a liar. He doesn't make stuff up. He's not some secret cabal.
Not the lizard guy.
You know, he's not, yeah, and all that kind of stuff. But he's pretty well rounded when it comes to these things. Okay, so my point is that he's in a different area than I'm in. And some of you are in areas where there's nothing. Like Iowa has less than Minnesota, I think. Iowa's numbers are way less, I think, or a tad bit less, which is good. I mean, thank the Lord. But, you know,
So how many cases did you say that you have in your entire state?
in the entire state, we have 1,154 recorded.
Yeah, we had more cases in one day overnight than you have total.
Right. What is the total number?
We're approaching 20,000 that are, confirmed. Because the numbers I'm looking at right now are from yesterday. So we're 20,000, and the deaths were. Let me see.
Be found in Christ.
We're over 400 by today. It's probably over 500 deaths.
Okay.
The thing is like I said, right from Jump Street. Okay, for full disclosure, I work for Ford Motor Company, so I'm in the auto industry, and this whole area, everyone knows this is the Motor City. It's called that for a reason. We have dozens of factories here. General Motors, Chrysler, Ford. And so the workforce is a little different here than most places because it's predominantly manufacturing. And so you have a community that works on top of one another like a beehive. So like in my factory, in one shift, there's 1,800 of us working in one room, under one roof. It's a big roof, but there's 1,800 people working in one building. And if you know anything about the COVID virus, the coronavirus, apparently, according to the scientists, I mean, I'm not a scientist, so I can't verify this, but the virus can live on metal for 3 days. Well, guess what we're working on? Metal. So every car that I'm an auto tech, so I'm working on vehicles with diagnostics and repairing software issues and hardware. Anyway, but every car I touch has been touched by 700 people before me.
Wow.
So you could see the potential there for viral spread. So when this thing started, we're all looking at each other like, why are we here? Because the state had already been under an emergency. The corporate headquarters of the big three they all got to work from home. Now all is probably a strong word. I don't know that. Many were told to work from home, so we know they understood the risk, but yet they jammed us into a building with 1,800 people, and you just multiply that by however many factories and part suppliers there are around here. And so we're like, why are we even here? I mean, because the thing takes 2 weeks to manifest itself, up to 2 weeks to manifest itself. You can get the virus and have nothing going on for up to 2 weeks before you show symptoms. The average is 5 days, but it could be up to 2 weeks. So we're all looking at each other like, we've got the plague and nobody knows who has it because we could have it and not know it. So people were a little upset about that. And so finally they shut the thing down. And since then, at least eight, I'm thinking for some reason the number 10 is in my head, but I know for sure there's been 8 auto workers have died of this COVID-19. So immediately I understood this to be not the same thing as the flu, which is what I hear from so many people, and it's not. And the death rate isn't even really the metric that we should be focusing on to determine whether it's the same or not anyway. So the debates rage on over the death rate and how many people die of the flu every year and so forth and so on. And it's almost irrelevant to the discussion. The death rate isn't even the focal point of the issue. It's the transmissibility or the contagion level. I don't know if I'm saying that right, but this thing is 3 times more contagious than the flu. Nobody has immunity to it. So none of the doctors have immunity to it. None of the nurses, none of the hospital workers, none of the first responders. Nobody's got immunity to this thing like they do with the flu. So no matter what flu outbreak you have, your healthcare industry is prepared for it because your doctors and nurses aren't under threat of getting severely ill. With this thing, they are. We've got, yesterday I looked at some statistics. There's over about 2,500 healthcare workers just in the Detroit area are out sick. Some are in ICU themselves. So you're losing healthcare workers. So I know I'm starting to sound like I'm rambling, but I'm trying to explain my perspective.
Yep. No, keep going.
And I can understand why other people are wondering why this is a big deal. I'm coming at it from a place where it is a big deal. My best friend at work, the very first day we were off work, he calls me up, says, I broke a fever. I'm getting tested for the COVID tomorrow because they had to order the test. This was early. This was like March 19th, I think. It was a Friday. Anyway, he broke out in a fever. Well, I had spent some time with him the day before. And I work with him every day. But I had spent some close quarters time with him the previous day. So I'm like, oh, great. I could have this. I've got 5 children at home, one with asthma, a son with asthma, and a daughter with a tachycardia of her heart. Now all the valves are working fine, but her heart rate is high. So they would be considered at risk. Now my wife is potentially immunosuppressed. She's got tests being run and things like that. So keep her in prayer. But she's got some issues going, maybe rheumatoid arthritis, which is an autoimmune problem, which would put her at risk. I'm not really worried about me. I've been blessed with great health my whole life. One day that's going to end. We all know that. But, so now am I a carrier or what? Right. So now I'm locking myself in my room, and I did so for almost 2 weeks. Well, I waited for his confirmation. He was confirmed with COVID. So 4 days into it, when I knew he had COVID, I isolated myself and the rest of my family for the final 9 days or whatever it was to complete the 14 days. I never got a fever. I had some sinus things going on, but it's that time of year. I've got allergies, so I couldn't tell what was going on there. So I don't know if I had it and I was one of them asymptomatic guys or not, but right now my family's fine. But I'm saying all that to say, from day one, my best friend got COVID-19, and he gave me the blow-by-blow details. I was talking to him every single day online, and he was having a rough go of it. He never had to be hospitalized, but if I had him on here right now, he'd tell you it was the worst sickness he's ever had.
Now tell me about his, there were 5 people at his church. Did you say something like that?
It's up to 10. It's up to about 10 people now from his church that have been tested positive for COVID. Now, I mean, the common denominator between the 10 of them is their church.
Right.
Did they all get it from there? There's no way to prove that. I have no way. Maybe they all shop at the same grocery store too. I have, you know what I mean? I have no idea of knowing, but okay, so I see this. I know this. This is real data. This is first person knowledge. This is not some internet site I'm reading. I'm not, listening to some guy on some website tell me what to think. I know this is all firsthand information on my part. So now this is experience. This is not guesswork. And then, of course, these eight people die here locally These are workers. These are not retired people. I've never heard of anyone dying of the flu. In the 33 years I've been in the auto industry, I've never heard of anybody dying of it. Now, has somebody died of the flu that's worked? They've been working, not retired, been working. I have no idea, but you'd think you'd have heard of it at some point in 33 years. So I've never heard of anyone dying of the flu
Right.
that is an auto worker in 33 years, but 8 people in 1 week. And then I've got to look at social media and everyone's telling me this is nothing different than the flu. It's all overblown. It's a hoax. It's a conspiracy. Well, you can't tell me that. You can't tell me that. I know better already. This is all firsthand information on my part. I'm living in a hot spot. Having said all that, I'll repeat myself. I understand why somebody in South Dakota might be wondering what's the big deal, right? I totally get it, right? So that's why my position on this whole thing has been that every church needs to operate out of a position of wisdom and not compulsion, right? Because there's debating about whether we have to obey these stay-at-home orders and all that, and that gets us into the incorporated issue, which we're going to discuss a little later too. But so I've been consistent in just saying, hey, you do what you want to do. You're a local church, do what you want. I would give some advice and counsel as to warning my congregation that every head of household is assuming the risk, because being in the ministry long enough now, I know how internal strife can come about easily and cause problems in the church. So, for example, hypothetically, we meet and someone gets sick. Then the preacher gets blamed for meeting. We shouldn't have met. My sister's dead because you didn't shut down the church. Right. I mean, tell me that's not a strong possibility if something like that happens, right? It's emotional. Somebody in your family dies.
Pastors get blamed for everything.
Right. Of course. Or sister so-and-so's at church and she's coughing and you hear her coughing, and then 4 days later your dad's sick and now you're blaming she shouldn't have come to church, she was coughing, right? So just a bit of counsel there to you pastors that are listening, if any are listening, or deacons or anybody that's got the ear of the pastor. If you decide to meet, that's fine. You have to make that call based on what's happening in your area, in the circumstances and environment that you live in. That's what churches do all day, every day. But I would make it a point to tell every head of household, and the only reason I say that is because there are widows and single women.
Right.
So I can't just say just all the men, because that wouldn't cover every home. So every head of household needs to assume the risk. So if anybody in that family gets sick, that's on them. That was their decision. They made this decision. They assumed the risk. They assembled, and that will stop all potential brush fires from breaking out within the congregation, because nothing will destroy congregation faster than people starting to point fingers at one another. And I think that should be avoided at all costs, especially under a stressful situation such as this. People can drop and turn on a dime when adversity kicks in. Everything's great when everything's going fine, but when adversity kicks in, you don't know who's going to turn first. So, and that's just human nature. That's not a criticism.
Well, here's what just happened in Minnesota here. It says here that Waltz extends the Minnesota stay-at-home order to May 4th. Schools, bars, and restaurants to remain closed. It says here that Governor Waltz is extending a statewide stay-at-home order to May 4th as an effort to reduce or delay the impact of COVID-19. We bought the time we needed. It is interesting to me that he doesn't list churches in there, though. It kind of is interesting that they don't do that.
I think there's constitutional reasons for that. And
I think there is too.
They, to be honest with you, I personally believe they have the power to do that for other reasons. But I know they, I'll give you an example. Like, did you hear the this church that was in Maryland, I think, where this church, there was only 10 people there, and they were allowed to have 10 according to this quote unquote stay-at-home orders. There were 10 people there, and then like 5 or 6 police show up and shut the thing down as if they were violating the order, but they weren't. and then they did the same thing the next week. Actually, they shut it down the first week, but the second week they were just had a police presence there. And so, of course, I can understand people getting upset and saying this is government overreach and all that other kind of stuff. But hear me out here. Let's just say it is government overreach. Just now, put yourself in the shoes of the city. Okay, they're not saved people. They're not trying to shut down Christianity. They're just trying to listen to their medical counselors, right? The doctors. So, from their perspective, okay, they send cops to this church, unlikely to shut down that church because they know the legal ramifications of that. But of the hundreds of churches in that city, they all heard about that, didn't they? I heard about it. I'm not even in Maryland. So it was a smart move on the city's part from their perspective because it chills all the other churches from bothering to attempt to meet because they don't want the hassle of all these police coming. So you can understand why a city might do that to dissuade the other churches from doing that, from meeting. You see what I'm saying? They're trying to influence behavior. So I could see them doing that, not to shut that church down, but to kind of harass it.
Right.
So the other churches decide, well, I don't want to go through the harassment. We'll just shut it all down, which is what the city wants you to do anyway. So anyway, my legal experience, I've got other glasses I can put on from that perspective because I've been to court. I don't know how many times I've been arrested. Times I can't count. I've been to federal court. I've been to district court in many cities, different states. So I've had to have I'm not a lawyer. I'm not going to give legal advice, but I'm just saying I have experience firsthand. So I kind of learned some lessons on how cities operate and why police do things. They do the same thing with street preaching. They try to shut you down, but they know they can't. So they word things like disturbing the peace or disorderly conduct or refusing to identify yourself or using the bullhorn. It's never for preaching, right? But that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to get you to stop preaching, but they can't. So they come up with something else or another avenue to try to shut you down. So that's kind of what I see going on there. So I'm saying all that. I guess what started us is we were talking about every church has to make their own decisions. So you have to operate from a position of wisdom, not compulsion. Instead of looking at it like from my perspective, they can have all the stay-at-home orders they want or not have any. We're not meeting because it's flat out not safe. It would be totally unwise for us to put our elderly people in jeopardy to meet right now. And so we're doing what everyone else is doing, and we're putting stuff online, and we're doing that kind of thing. So we can still stay in touch with our people. But I can also understand why someone in South Dakota would say, well, I don't have to do all that. Well, great. Don't do that. Go meet, do your thing. There's nothing wrong with that. Just have the right spirit about it. You don't want a rebellious spirit. Well, I'm going to show them. Well, that's the wrong spirit. Even if you're right, that's still the wrong spirit. If it's what you think you should do, operate from a spirit of wisdom, not from a spirit of compulsion. I think that's the way that we should operate, but that's just my opinion. Of course,
I get it, and I get what you're saying as well. They're doing it it's kind of like, showing people that they're going to stand up, you know what I mean?
Right, of course.
And that the government is going to do what they're going to do to try to chill the rights and when you chill the rights of people, most of the time they get afraid and they'll back off and they'll like fight it another day.
Right. And you can do that. Chilling someone's First Amendment rights is also unconstitutional.
Yes, it is.
You can literally sue cities for chilling your First Amendment rights.
We had it happen here in Northfield. We had it happen in Faribault. We had it happen in a number of different areas. We had them do that. The police try to chill the rights of us while we were preaching and everything like that. So it's happened, and I know, and what I said to people also, I said, well, you know what? I'm going to look at this thing, and I read how the governor listed it, and he was asking people to volunteer. And to do it. And I get at that point. Now, I'm not sure what I'm going to do from here on out as far as that goes.
You got to pray about it for sure.
Yeah, because I don't really know if around here it's as big a danger. When I look at things, I mean, I know it very well could be, but it also could be, at any time. In the summer it can be, in the fall it's going to be, you know what I mean?
Right.
So
Right.
I don't know, I get the whole stopping the flow. Let's see, here's what it says here. Exceptions to stay-at-home order include shopping for groceries, other necessities, picking up takeout orders, blah, blah, blah. Care of persons, outdoor activities, same thing, basically. Funerals are limited to 10 attendees with strict social distancing. So, I don't know. I get it. I mean, I get why they're doing it, and I get why you would do it there where you're at. For
Right,
sure.
right.
You know what I mean? I would do the same thing where you are. With me, it gives me pause to think about a few things because, I'm not sure if the situation is so dire where I'm at as it is where you are.
Right, and I can totally understand that. Absolutely. But see, that's what I mean. See, the typical, what I've experienced through this here with social media anyway, preachers, it's part of our nature, I guess, to draw lines in the sand.
Yeah.
Right and wrong, right? Black and white. Everything's seems to have to be try to forced into those two options. And so, there are those that would say it's never right to not meet. Like, so to them, we would be wrong for not meeting.
And that's stupid to me.
You know what I'm saying?
That's so stupid. That's not even logical.
Right. No, it's not. And that's why I've been consistent from day one and just saying, you just need to operate from a position of wisdom.
Right. And let's stop here for a second.
Thing.
And let me say something to the people that are on here right now. There's 70 people on here right now. Let me say something to you about that. And I want you to think about this.
Okay.
If you're in the middle of a place that's having an epidemic of how many a day? 1,100 a day.
It's more than that now.
Yeah. So you're having thousands upon thousands in the Detroit metro area and around. That whole, how many mile radius, Brother Ickes, would you say that it's really on fire?
Probably a 75 mile.
Okay,
radius.
75-mile radius. So if you're in that 75-mile radius of an absolute outbreak, let me ask the people that are listening to us and just have them think about this for a second. Would you tell people or a church that was there, well, you're wrong for not meeting at church because you ought to just have faith and you ought to suck on that poison from that snake and you ought to just believe God? Because, I mean, it would be, to me, it's absolutely ignoring the situation that you're in because it's not gonna go away right now, the situation that you're in. And if you're meeting at church and you're going through that and people are just dying like crazy around you and they're being infected like crazy around you, I tell people, if you're sick, don't come to church.
We see that's a great point, and I've brought that point up as well. And this is how people are being hypocritical or emotional. I mean, nobody's hypocritical on purpose. I'll put it like that. They just don't know they're doing it. But prior to COVID-19, you would keep your kids home when they were sick because you didn't want to get the other kids sick. Or you wouldn't go yourself because you didn't want to get the other kids sick.
We have 30
you see what I'm
kids.
saying?
We have 30 kids here in our church. All right? If we had the outbreak that you had, every single person in this church would have that.
No, I know exactly what you mean.
It's just the way it would
But
be.
see, but we already kind of practice that already as is, right?
Exactly.
We've been doing it our whole life, because you use a little bit of wisdom. And it's like, nah, I don't want to get widow Susie sick, so I'm gonna stay home this week. I don't want it to spread through the church. And that's just with like a regular cold or a regular flu. You've been
Right.
doing that for your entire Christian life. But now all of a sudden, because the government says stay home, now you're going to on purpose force it to happen. And to me, that's like a spirit of rebellion. Now, of course, you could say, well, nobody's sick right now. That's the thing with this thing. You don't know you don't know if you're sick with it right now.
I
The
think that's
the
why.
unknown is part of the thing, and you have to wait. You can't just ignore that.
No.
You could be sick with this thing and not even know you have it, and it might be a week before you even show symptoms. So another factor I weigh is, like if someone got sick because of me and died, or had damaged lungs, or disabled for the rest of their life, I don't want to live with regret. I think the Lord has given us a little bit of common sense to where we can see what's going on around us. We've got doctors. How many times do people with cancer or with other diseases, they go to the doctors and then they pray, Lord, guide the doctor's hands. You pray for healing, give them the wisdom to handle the situation of my loved one, so forth and so on. So here you have doctors that are doing just that. They're doing their thing. They're informing you. And now all of a sudden, for some weird reason, because the government is telling us we have to stay home, we're not going to prove a point. And to me, I use this illustration. It's like that's like a juvenile attitude as far as I'm concerned, because I used to have one of those. I was a juvenile once upon a time, and I probably would have been the fool to get myself in trouble, and I did plenty of times. But say a tornado's coming to your house, and you tell the children go down to the basement, and they refuse to go to the basement. So what do? You see there's a tornado a mile from your house, you see it coming. What do? Well, you lock them in the basement for their own good.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And you'll deal with the fallout from that later. If they're mad, whatever, it doesn't matter. For their own good, you're going to lock them in the basement. There's a point where you can't just be rebellious for the sake of proving a point. That's where wisdom has to kick in.
Right.
It shouldn't even matter that they're telling you to stay home. Why would you not want to stay home? In my situation, I'm saying, right? So again, like for where you're at, or South Dakota, or wherever, there's nothing going on. The chances are minimal that anybody's going to get sick. Then make your decision. But let's not draw lines in the sand and pretend that a church in one area is wrong for not doing what you think you would do, right? Local churches have independency, so let them act independently.
Absolutely, and I agree with that. And for my situation, it's kind of like, for me, it's like a borderline decision here, as far as I don't feel compelled that I have to just that I'm in danger to meet right now.
Mm-hmm.
I don't feel that like that there's that compelling thing for me. It's something I need to pray about, but it's just I don't believe that's where we're at now. Does that mean that somebody can't get it? No, we're all going to the grocery store, so somebody can get it there too. It's very possible that can go to the grocery store and they're going to catch something there. I mean, grocery stores are not sanctified areas that are magic, that have pixie dust of cleanser on them that keeps us from getting COVID-19. I mean, it's right. Super possible that we could catch it from at gas station, whatever. I mean, that's why the stay-at-home order's there. I understand, but the point is that it could happen there too. And obviously groups make things worse and make it more possible. But I don't know. When I look at places like Minnesota and Iowa, and especially out here where we're at, we're not in Minneapolis, which really, honestly, Minneapolis doesn't, when you look at the numbers, Minneapolis doesn't really have that bad of numbers. It's at other parts of the state where we're seeing, worse numbers at, which was kind of surprising to me. I would have thought it would have been all inner city, but there's no rhyme or reason to this thing, really, to be honest with you. And I I don't think people are lying around here. I don't think that's happening.
No,
So
one thing I think Detroit um, is interesting because why Detroit? What makes Detroit any more susceptible to this than Minneapolis or Columbus? Detroit has direct flights to China because of the auto industry. So there's people coming and going to China every day of the week, in Asia. Um, so we have direct flights from our airport to the places.
and that's why I think you guys got it the worst.
Exactly. There's no doubt in my mind. And not only that,
Minneapolis, they shut the airport down at that point and they didn't let those flights in.
and one of our companies, Chrysler, is actually owned by Fiat, so they call it Fiat Chrysler now. And guess where that's located? Italy. So it's a double whammy here. You've got executives traveling back and forth from Italy and from China, and those were the two hottest spots on the planet. So it's not even a surprise that it hit here the way. I
No.
mean, I'm surprised it's not worse. But if people haven't been paying attention, everyone knows about how bad New York City is, right? New Jersey, it's basically an extension of New York City. It's right across the bay there. Um, we're right behind those two. That's where I live. I live in ground not zero but three. We're right behind New York. Well, right behind might be an extreme description. As far as numbers, we're third. Okay, we're not near New York City's numbers, but we're still third
Per capita,
in the
yeah.
entire in the entire country. So that's where we're at.
Okay.
So of course our perspective's a little different. That's all. That's all I'm saying.
And I agree with that, and I can understand that too as well. Somebody asked a question about so who declares the risk over? Is anyone ever going to think that their cough is not COVID-19?
Yeah.
You know,
I
and that
to
was
be
a
honest,
sincere question. I don't think it was like
it is a sincere. No, it is a sincere question. What I'm looking for, and this is just me, what I'm personally looking for, I'm not looking for the state to tell me when it's safe. Again, I'm asking people to operate from a position of wisdom, not compulsion. So I'm not even looking to the state for whether we're meeting or not in the first place. What I'm looking for is the healthcare industry to be ready, right? Because the way I understand it with and again, full disclosure, I've watched every second. I know some of you are going to laugh, but I have watched every second of every press conference from the White House task force. Just whether I'm not saying I agree with everything I hear. I'm just saying I have watched every second of every press conference on purpose, so I know exactly what they're saying.
Mm-hmm.
As opposed to having to get my information through someone else telling me what they said, which, because I've watched every second of every press conference, they're lying. Even if I agree with their conclusion, I know they're lying. They're mischaracterizing what was said because I heard what was said, and I heard the question that prompted the answer. I heard the press conference the day before, which gave more information. So the answer today was piggybacking on the previous information. So it wasn't complete in its own. So you know how things work. People cherry pick
Oh yeah.
sound bites and things like that. Anyway, I'm saying all that. So I've listened to all that to inform myself. And could they be lying to me? Sure. So could the internet guy you're listening to. You know what I mean?
That's true.
You don't know who's telling the truth. So at some point I'm listening to somebody because I'm not in the lab looking at it under a microscope. So I'm choosing to listen to the people that have the inside information, not somebody on the outside speculating. So that's my choice. Now other people, can choose not to do that. And that's fine. That makes for interesting discussion. But to shorten the answer, I think people need to, and I'm going to make a decision based on when I think the healthcare industry is over the hump. In other words, like I said earlier, there's over 2,500 healthcare workers in the Detroit area that are infected. Well, there's coming a point soon where they're going to have complete immunity. They're going to have all the equipment they need. They're going to have all the face masks, gloves, shields, ventilators, respirators, test kits, everything that they need. They're working on these therapies, right? I mean, everybody's heard of hydroxychloroquine with the Z-Pak or with zinc. They're working on all these therapies. They're getting all this data in on what works, what doesn't work. I mean, I've listened to some of the doctors that are running COVID floors that are saying they've learned, like in the typical flu, you put people on a ventilator and it helps just with them laying in bed. But no, you've got to put people on their stomach. Why? I don't know why. But see, these are the little things that we don't know because we don't do this. Is not our expertise. They're flipping patients over. I don't know what that does for the lungs. I'm not a pulmonary therapist. Maybe if you have some that are listening, they can chime in. But I'm saying all that to say they're tweaking their therapeutics. They're tweaking their operations on how they care for COVID infected patients, right? So at some point, there's going to be an institutional experience and skill set to know how to take care of people properly that are infected with COVID. And they're getting close to that point now. So when they get to that point, at that point, it's like, okay, let's get back to work. Let's go do our thing. It doesn't matter. You can't avoid getting sick, but you're going to get maximum health care if you do get sick.
Sure.
That's because I see all the information, all the data that's being put out by the task force isn't about preventing death. It's about preventing needless death. So in other words, they don't want anybody dying in the hallway because they don't have a ventilator for them. You know what I'm saying? What I'm getting at? Like, of course, people point to the flu. So many people die of the flu. Right. But every single one of those people that die of the flu had maximum care. They have the medicines. They have, the antivirals that they can try.
You're saying they had a fighting chance, basically.
They were given the maximum level of care possible and still succumb to the disease. At that point, you can sleep at night because you did everything you possibly could. With the COVID, that's not the case. If this thing were to just explode with no countermeasures or mitigation, which is what's going on with us staying at home, there'd be people dying in the hallways. All the doctors and nurses would be sick. They wouldn't have had the PPEs to even care for themselves. You see where this is going?
Yes.
So at some point when the system is able to handle it, well, then you just let it handle it. And then whatever happens because it's in God's hands at that point. This virus isn't just like going to disappear, right? It's likely most of us are going to get it at some point anyway. But if I'm going to get it, or my son with asthma is going to get it, it's my job to make sure he has a fighting chance to live, right?
Sure.
That they can do everything they possibly can for him in the hospital. And now's not the time you want to be in the hospital.
No.
So I'm just trying to get my family to be, we're acting on a sense of wisdom. This isn't a sense of fear. This is just a sense of paying attention and using some common sense to hope that we don't get sick until the system can handle us. And then at that point, it is what it is. Yeah, I hope that makes sense. I think I
makes
did the best
sense.
I could to describe it, but
no, that makes sense to me.
So that's when I think we go back to meeting, and then somebody gets it. You can't stop it at that point, but at least they will get maximum care to have a chance to fight it as best as possible. And I think that is a reasonable way to operate for anybody. You don't throw your own children into a hospital that can't care for them on purpose. To me, that's not too wise. So why risk it until they get to that point? And they're almost there all right now. Now, where I'm at, right? So we're comparing where you're at, where I'm at. Where I'm at, I'm seeing a blessing, because where I'm at in 2 weeks, we're going to have some herd immunity in my local community. So the chances of it blowing up shrink. It's my healthcare providers that are getting over this COVID and getting immunity right now. It's our doctors that are getting the experience, that are learning what works, what doesn't work. You know what I'm saying? So in 2 weeks, I'm in a good place. I'm in one of the most prepared places on the planet to where maybe your area or or somewhere else, like, you know, I don't know, another big city, you know, say Phoenix or something.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
How about New Orleans?
well, New Orleans is going through it too. So
Yeah, it's pretty
so
bad over there right now.
while we're the place that nobody wants to be today, we're going to be the place everyone wants to be tomorrow,
Right.
because we're getting through this first, and um,
ourselves.
you know
That
what I mean. So
created.
I see that as a silver lining.
Yeah, well, you know, it is interesting because it sounds like to me that like some of those states, like your state right there in Michigan especially, that they're going to have a more there it's already hit and it's already taken off, and I mean it's going to get it's not quite peaked yet where you're at, and it's going to get a little worse. It sounds like before it gets better, but then they'll be prepared for it. Other states like Iowa, Minnesota, it doesn't sound like it's good. There's going to be a whole lot of takeoff. As bad.
And that's good.
Yeah,
Yes,
praise
that's
the Lord.
great.
Yeah, but so I mean, I think it's where you live. It's like if we were talking about anything else right now, and there was this severe outbreak of smallpox or something, whatever it was that preachers went through. By the way, George Washington went through it, and he quarantined thousands of his troops, and he quarantined them off from going home or going around anybody else because of the smallpox outbreak that was there. He said smallpox killed more people than the British did in his army.
I believe that. I believe that.
And so he took extreme measures to deal with it. And everything else like that. So
yeah, that's why I appreciated your series on that show you did on 1918.
Yep.
I mean, you did all my work for me. That was great. I mean, I really appreciate. No, I mean, I sincerely, I appreciated that, because I've already used that and used that as a resource to send to others to look at, because, I mean, I think, most of the tinfoil brigade, they're jumping to all these conspiracies. And I understand the skepticism totally. I'm a skeptic by nature. I mean, but anyway, so I totally get it. But this isn't the first time this has happened. So
that's
they're all
what
freaking out.
That's what my problem was.
That was helpful. That study was very helpful for a lot of people.
Yeah, I think so, because everybody thought it was, this is unprecedented. This has never occurred before. Wait a minute, hold on. And I didn't even go back all the way back into history of how the Black Plague, what it was like in London at the time, and really deal with 1666 when all that went down there, and they were taking. Hey, let me tell you something, folks. Let's talk about tyranny here for a second, okay? Or the scary way things went down. Back in 1666, when you got those diseases, you know what they did to you? They boarded up your stinking house and stuck you there and let you die there. 30 days later, they cranked it open to see if you were still alive, and if you were still alive, they banged the doors back again and locked you back in another 30 days. So, I mean, life's a lot different now. If this is lockdown compared to that lockdown, I'll take this lockdown any day compared to that lockdown the way it was.
Exactly. I think because, again, back to the perspective thing, I think that's why a lot of people think they're panicking too soon. I think everything's going to be fine economically and with this virus here.
I mean, soon. I won't lie to you. I'm restless. I don't like it. I'm not one. I don't like sitting around. I don't like. I mean, I'm still doing what I'm doing. I'm busier than I've ever been because I'm still visiting people. I'm still counseling people. I'm still going about. I mean, I'm busy. I'm actually busier during COVID-19 than I was before COVID-19, if you can believe that. I am busier than I've been in years, and I like it because it keeps my head straight and it keeps me going. So it's fine. I'm finding ways to keep busy. But the thing is, people need to understand, like, kind of that this is not. You can't say this is. There's two sides to this. There's the civil rights side, there's the economic side, and then there's the religious
side.
Yeah. you know, or medical side, and then I guess you could say the religious side if you want to as well. I mean, what as Christians we do, what as citizens we do in that sense, financially, what decisions are good for the country, and all these other things. I guess I should ask you this question and let you defend yourself in that, not really defend yourself, but kind of explain yourself, I think, because you can't do it in tidbits on Facebook.
Right.
Okay, and it's not really fair that way to really do that. And I think people, all our friends, we have friends that disagree with us, and I'm kind of in the middle on this. I'm probably a shade bit different than you are on this,
No, I've discerned that.
you know, but not completely, and I'm not completely over the libertarian, let's go grab the cannons and head to DC type spirit either with all this, or, you know, I'm not ready to get my tinfoil hat on yet, and I'm not thinking that it's the grandest conspiracy ever. You know what I mean? So I want to kind of, I feel like I'm kind of in the middle with this a little bit, and I think that I would be more like you if I was sitting in Detroit right now. I absolutely believe that. I believe, or if I was in New York right now. If I was in New York right now, New Orleans, those areas, we wouldn't be having this discussion whether our church is meeting or not. We wouldn't be thinking
Exactly right, because you'd be operating on us out of a position of wisdom and not compulsion.
right.
And that's where everyone should be. My thing is this, okay? So I think social media, the 21st century, has got us all screwed up because we're used to getting our food now, our information now. We want everything now. We can't. There's like patience is lost. Okay. So how do you learn patience? Through what? Long
Trials.
suffering, right?
Yep.
Through long suffering. So we're suffering right now. To some degree, this is nothing like what previous generations have been through.
What our forefathers
But
went through.
compared to a month ago, we're suffering, right? But is it long suffering, or has it been short suffering? Right? It's short. This is 10 minutes of time, but it seems like forever because we live in a fast-paced now, go. We can't even slow down enough to think and to let the thing play out. And this is where I've been doing my best to try to do, is to not get into the prediction game, to just take it one day at a time, look at the data to see if it validates what I am experiencing, what I see, what I know so far. What I'm hearing from the task force is validated by the reality that I know, that I know on firsthand basis, because I'm here where it's hot. So I just think everybody needs to just take it one day at a time. And that's easy for me to say, right? I don't own a small business and someone's losing money hand over fist. So you can start to panic and overreact. I totally get it. I can sympathize with that. I'm not against you being concerned about that. I'm concerned for you about that. I'm just saying, I think as far as society is concerned, we've lost the ability to exercise patience. And I know there's coming a point where it's time to open everything up. Just get back to work, and whatever happens, because you can't let what have they been saying? They've been calling it the cure be worse than the disease. Totally get it. Right now where I'm at, we're not at that point. Because if you opened everything up back here, it's just going to get 10 times worse.
Well, you can't. I mean, you got everybody sick there. But see, here's the thing that I have a problem with, that these governors that are in areas where it's not that bad, that, I mean, some of them, like in the Dakotas, they have no restrictions. They're just their business as usual. Iowa hasn't really shut much down. I don't know if they went into a curfew or not. I don't think they did. But
I think there's 8 states. I think there's 8 states total that haven't declared to stay at home. Right.
And I mean, I don't know. Is it?
But at the same time, people need to understand that, right? Because the focus is, and this is a political part of the discussion, and I don't care where someone stands on politics or what they think about the current administration or not. Let's just pretend this is not Trump or Obama. Right. This is just
X. Yeah.
some random administration. Bottom line is, the states are the ones that are in control. The states are where things are being taken care of. That's where they're supposed to be taken care of. And why everyone keeps looking to DC to point fingers of blame, to me, I'm scratching my head going, that's not even the right way. You're not even thinking like an American at that point. You should be looking at your state capital. If you got a problem with stay at home, everyone's yelling at DC. Well, DC hasn't told anybody to stay home. Sure, they're saying we suggest that you practice social distancing. However, the administration has said on more than one occasion, when pressed, by leftists who think like communists, so they're thinking about centralized power. That's how they think, right? That's their ideology. So they don't even understand states have the paramount power, not the federal government. But so they're pressing the administration to force those other 8 states to issue stay-at-home orders, and they don't understand why Trump won't force them to. And they're using that as a way to blame the administration if this thing gets worse. They're just setting him up, but he's answering it totally properly. He's like, well, there's this thing called the Constitution. I'd like the states to just exercise the Constitution, and I've left it to the governors to make the call, because not all states are the same, and they're not, like we've said repeatedly now. Each state doesn't have the same situation to deal with. So people need to focus their frustration at their state capital, not at Washington, D.C. If you're going to get upset, at least get upset at the right people. If that makes sense.
Right.
So I can understand getting upset, but at least focus it properly, because it doesn't do any good to focus your anger in the wrong direction. You're not going to get the solutions that you desire if you're not even barking up the right tree. You're just wasting your time.
I mean, the thing that, and the one thing looking at the governor, what he said here today, it says we have the lowest COVID, one of the lowest COVID-19 infection rates in the country, but the state must not get complacent, so we got to keep everything shut down again. I mean, it's just, to me, I'm like, okay, well, are we going to get to May 4th and be like, okay, you're all in lockdown again? I mean, I feel like I'm on timeout and I'm going to be stuck here for the 3 months while you guys decide it's okay for me to peek my head outside and look around. Right. I mean, it's just, some of this is like, it gets to me a little bit. I mean, I call it the libertarian side of me. I don't know what it is, but I mean, part of it's like, okay, all right, well, I could get it if we have like this major, huge outbreak that's like crazy, but we're not looking at those type of numbers here. And when is it time to say, okay, we got it? So May 4th is the time that we say we get to start looking at, or are you going to hit May 4th or May 3rd and be like, okay, well, sorry guys, you're going to be stuck at home again for all summer long.
Right.
You can sit in your little house and roast.
That's not going to fly. There's a point where people are going to be like, that's enough. We've done the best we could, but no longer. I'm just imploring people to just use some wisdom in your local area. Look at your local area and what's going on there. Focus your energies where solutions can actually occur. But my hunch is that there's lawyers behind all this stuff, obviously, because politicians most of them are lawyers, but with liability and all that other kind of stuff, I can see governors having lawyers speak in their ears. If somebody gets sick and we pull back too soon, are we going to get sued? I mean, all that stuff is in play now. Stuff that people don't think about, right? I mean, it's just this is not. People don't think about this stuff because they don't have to, and they shouldn't have to. They're carpenters and they're grocers and they're whatever, barbers, so truck drivers. So they don't think about this stuff. But this is what goes on in places of power. So there's liability to worry about, because you're bringing up good points. Why would a governor in an area that has nothing going on, relatively nothing going on, why would they issue stay-at-home orders? Because it makes no sense. Well, somewhere it makes sense.
Right.
Somewhere it does. It doesn't make sense on the street, at street level, but it's making sense somewhere.
And absolutely, and I agree. And if I was in New York, I'd be thanking God that there's a
No. What I mean is, like, in each state, for the state, right. say the stay-at-home orders in your state. Okay, it doesn't make sense at street level.
Right.
but somewhere it makes sense.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So at some level, it's making sense to do that. And I don't know what those variables and metrics are that they're looking at where it makes sense. But I'm guessing, this is where I'm speculating. I'm guessing and speculating there's liability involved here. Maybe there's federal funds that don't go into effect if those orders aren't in place. If there's not a state of emergency in the state, then they don't qualify for federal funds. You see what I'm saying?
Well, that's what I think. I think it's like a federal squeeze that they can use funds to their advantage and be like, everybody wants that federal money right now, so
Right.
they're gonna bend their ear to the federal government in order to keep things the way that it is because they know they want that money.
Yeah, I don't personally believe the federal government is squeezing them to take the money. I just think
I don't think either.
the states are afraid of not having access to the money. So there are certain things they have to do, like declare a state of emergency in their state to qualify, to have the ladder, the bridge to that federal funding. So I think that's what you see going on. And but anyway, we can go on all day about that. Every state's got to do their own thing. Every preacher's got to do their own thing.
Absolutely.
So I think preachers meetings, even though it's boring as all get out, and you don't even agree with half of what's being said, at least you know what was said. So you personally have the data to make an informed decision on what you want to do.
Right.
I think that's wise to at least make informed opinions and informed decisions, as opposed to emotional decisions and uninformed ones. That's where you can get yourself in trouble and make mistakes.
Just
stay informed.
I agree with that. I think you should. I think people are too lazy and they don't want to,
right.
They
want the 20-minute news report to tell them what to think. And
right.
I get it, but that's a bad idea.
Nope, I agree. I want to get to an article here and talk about what we were gonna, initially talk about. And we have enough time to. It doesn't take that long to talk about this, really.
Yeah, no, we might have run off all your listeners by now.
Oh no, they're all there. There's 70 of them there listening. Yeah, that's. No,
this is boring stuff, but in the moment, it's important to talk about.
Well, it isn't so much boring as for people that. For this audience, because they're interested in kind of hearing what different takes are, and I'm bringing a different take on this. I talked about conspiracies and things like that the other day about a few of those things. I brought the 1918 pandemic thing. I'm gonna pandemic, and then Friday I'm gonna deal with. There was something else I just saw, and I don't remember where it went. But anyway, I'm going to deal with some of these things, and I can't find out. I forgot what it was, but there was something with this whole thing that I was going to deal with, some of the connections that are to some of these people and things like that. Because I think you need to know who these people know and who they hang out with. I think it's important to know that, like, some of these doctors are very good buddies with people like Bill Gates. And, is this a way to push mandatory vaccines? I don't think we can ignore that. I don't think we can act like that's not there, like it's all crazy conspiratorial things, when it's like, okay, you're best friends with Bill Gates or pretty good buddies with Bill Gates, and this Dr. Fauci is or whatever, and he's really good friends with him. I mean, I think that matters. I think it matters that there's a friendship there, because that's going to skew his science a little bit. And we already know Bill Gates wants to depopulate the world. We already know that he's said it in so many ways, and he wants to vaccine things, and he loves sticking vaccines in brown kids. He loves to do that. So, I mean, that's just real. That's just the truth. I mean, I don't trust the Bill Gates Foundation for anything in the world, and I don't think we should. But anyway, so what I'm saying is
I agree with that.
I think looking at those things is not wrong. I can't base all of my understanding on those things. And that's the point I'm trying to make with people. You can't live in conspiracies. You have to live in reality, but you can also deal with hard facts when it comes to things. I think it's important to note that some of these doctors and their models have not worked very well, that their models seem to be like not working well. And the models that like we're going off of I'm looking at Minnesota's numbers right now, and I'm thinking, I think we should have got back to work. But I think my suspicion is there's a reason why the governor didn't do that right now. One of the reasons why is he didn't want people together for Easter and Ramadan because he was afraid this virus would break out and spread at Easter and Ramadan over in Minnesota, and he thought that would be a mass spread of things. So he wanted to get past the hump of that and get into May 4th when you're past all the April stuff. And then if you have, then you get everybody back to work, and if you have a spread, no big deal, they can handle it.
Right.
And that's my guess that's probably what he's doing. But that doesn't make it any easier for people to take. And
Right.
Americans do have a hard time with somebody telling them, just shut up and listen to what we said and do what we told you to do. Well, you can tell people to shut up and do what you want them to do in China because they don't have pew-pews. But here people have pew-pews. And when you tell them to shut up and just take your medicine, stick this in your arm, I'm going to kick your door in at your house. I'm having my Alex Jones moment here, okay? So, you're not getting our guns, Pierce. But anyway,
Yeah, this is why I've been, trying to get people to dial back a little and take a deep breath and
I'm
realize.
trying.
And no, you're good. I'm just saying based on my social media experience, because that's really been the only way I've been able to gauge what's going on outside off my property, because I've been here for 3 weeks.
Man, you ought to get out more. I'm just kidding.
Well, I've got 10 acres, so I do get outside, but I just don't leave the property. But I think people need to just, like I said, inform themselves, because what if it were wise to stay home and keep the numbers down? Instead, it gets back to what I had said earlier, because they're telling you to stay home, the American instinct is to push against that. And I totally get it, because that's my nature as well. I would consider myself a softcore prepper. So I'm prepared. So I'm not acting on fear. This is not, I'm prepared. But I'm also one of those guys that why I am a softcore prepper is because I've been part of the tinfoil brigade for 3 decades and closely associated. And so it's been since I've been a young man, and going through the whole, I'm in Michigan, right? So there was this thing, the Michigan militia, and of course, Timothy McVeigh came out of that, and we all know where he went with that. And so I know some of those people that were closely associated with those people, although I didn't know them personally. And I was a young man. I'm just a wide-eyed 20-something, listening to the Spotlight radio on shortwave radio and getting the Spotlight newsletter and, all those things. So I'm not ignorant of that movement, because that's where I come from. But over the years, and the older I get, I've seen too much of that become just baloney.
Yep, that's true. How many of those conspiracies have we seen that people have pushed that this is it, this is the end, the Antichrist is coming.
Every single time.
Lizard heads are coming. They're taking over everything. Right now, here it is.
Right, so my experience is that it's a legit experience.
Uh-oh. There it goes.
To not trust. I don't trust the government sources because, I've been involved in cases where police officers just flat out lie, where lawyers misinterpret or misrepresent actual facts, so, they're both to be looked at sideways. So where does that leave us? At some point we've got to plant our flag somewhere. We've got to get our information from somewhere. And if every single source is dubious, then we're swimming in a muddy pond, in quicksand with no way out. So what the disposition I've taken because of my life experience is to prepare for the worst and just live every single day. So in other words, live every single day as things happen in real time. So, for example, I'm not one of those guys that pushes the conspiracy theories, and I listen to them and I kind of weigh them. I think about them, but it's all noise to me almost anymore because it doesn't matter. I'm prepared to a degree. That's why I call myself a soft core prepper. I'm not a hardcore prepper. I don't have a bunker, that kind of stuff. But I have plenty to make it. I've done the best I could to prepare my home. So what I'm saying is, when you talk to people that push a lot of these conspiracies, and this event of COVID has taught me another lesson, and it's that a lot of the people that I listen to that are part of the tinfoil brigade, and I'm saying that kind of tongue in cheek. If anybody's getting offended at me for saying that, I don't mean that with contempt. It's just, to me, it's like a term of endearment. I've got friends that I would label as
We'll just give them your address.
brigade.
It's no big deal.
But they have been promoting these conspiracy theories for 3 decades, and then COVID happens, and they weren't prepared.
Right.
So, to me, they don't even believe what they're telling me to believe. Because if they believed what they themselves have been promoting for 30 years, they've had 30 years to be ready. And then in 3 weeks, they're freaking out. Like, oh my goodness, my world's coming to an end. I'm losing my job. I'm losing my business. I'm losing my home. Well, that's on you at that point. Mm-hmm. Because you've been telling us the end of the economy has been coming for 30 years and you can't handle 3 weeks. Now, I'm only saying that to expose to get people to think about what they're hearing from people. They don't believe what they're telling you, because if they did, they would have been ready. So I'm ready, and I don't believe half of that stuff, but I'm ready because I believe scripture. I know it's coming.
Yep.
I don't know when. I don't know if it's my lifetime, but one of these times the tinfoil brigade is going to be right, and I'm going to be ready for it. So if this were a conspiracy, if this was a complete conspiracy to crash the economy of the United States, I'm better prepared than almost anybody I know personally. Mm-hmm. So, but I don't believe all that stuff, but I'm still prepared. So I guess this is a learning experience for all of us. We should all be ready for something like this to happen, but that doesn't mean we have to believe all these conspiracy theories. You can still prepare. Mm-hmm. You can still so whether it's a hurricane or a tornado or a nuclear holocaust or the zombie apocalypse,
I'm ready for that one.
I think I'm ready for that too. That one would actually be entertaining. But I think you get what I'm saying. So I guess what I'm saying is it's all noise to me whether it's a conspiracy or not, because it doesn't even matter to me. I'm trying to live in the day. What's happening today? Why is it happening today? What is the trend? What is the data saying? Does the data match up with what I see and what I'm experiencing? I'm trying to walk circumspectly. I'm trying to walk with some sense of wisdom. And maybe I'm a fool, but I haven't been convinced of that yet. But of course, no fool is. So I could be a fool. But I'm just saying, people need to take a deep breath and just learn from this. Number one, it doesn't matter if the government has the right to do this. It absolutely does not matter. They're doing it, aren't they? Mm-hmm. So do we sit here and scream to the heavens about they can't do this, but they're doing it anyway? Or do we prepare for when they do it anyway? Right. So you just prepare for it anyway. It doesn't matter if they can do this. It doesn't matter if they should do this. It doesn't matter if they have a right to do this. They're doing it. So people either need to do something about it. I've in debates that I've had over the last 3 weeks over this here, it's like, look, I know how you can fight this. Go to the federal court and file an emergency injunction against the governor's state of emergency. Just go there, $150, at least it was last time I filed one in federal court. You get the form, go to the clerk, go to the courthouse, go to the clerk, get the form, file an emergency injunction to shut down the governor's state of emergency. Just go do that. Stop talking about it. Do something about it, or just stop talking.
Well, and that's just it. That's what I said to Brother Ickes. That's what I said to the other day. I showed my video of me on the street with that. You remember that video that made it on Alex Jones, the one where the guy, the sheriff just short-circuited and he kept saying over and over again, "There's a place for you to demonstrate down there. There's a place for you to demonstrate down there." If you remember that video, that guy, I said, look, I fought, for my rights in that sense. And if I thought that at this point 2 weeks ago, if I thought that it was right and it was expedient, it was not only lawful, but it was expedient, right? Things can be lawful, but not expedient.
Right.
And if it was lawful and expedient for me, or if it was expedient for me to fight, then I would meet as an assembly. I would let them arrest me. I would file an injunction against we would file the paperwork and we would sue them and take them to court. And
well, you could skip that. Again, I'm not a lawyer.
No, go ahead.
So I'll say that, but you could skip the arrest and go straight to the federal courthouse and file an emergency injunction against the city's state of emergency or stay-at-home orders,
or the governor's stay-at-home order, I guess.
Because if you get arrested, then now you're going to get a court date, and the federal court, well, they might still hear your emergency injunction anyway, but they're not going to hear your case for sure until the state court is satisfied first, and then you just bought yourself a waiting time to get the city or state into federal court. So you don't even have to get arrested. You could say your rights are chilled right now. You're being ordered not to meet. You think it's unconstitutional. And then you can go file an emergency injunction at the federal courthouse and be heard. And, your guess is as good as mine as how that's going to go down.
Well, it'd be interesting, wouldn't it?
And well, because that gets into the 501c3 thing.
I don't have one of those.
So, well, like in Michigan, I was talking to some pastor friends of mine here in Michigan when this first started going down and the state orders came out. So because I have a little more experience than most pastors in the legal side of things, although they don't agree with me on 501c3.
What's wrong with them anyway?
I don't know. Like, again, maybe I'm the fool. I don't know. But, they were asking me all these questions where they're saying, the state was saying no gatherings of over such and such and such and such. And I said, well, let me look at the decree first. At the time I was at work. Let me read the decree and then let me see what it actually says, because what they're telling you publicly is not always what is written in the decree. They don't give you the full version of what's actually in the decree. So when I looked at it, sure enough, there were in the fine print. Of course, the decree did not apply to constitutionally protected exercise.
That's right? What mine says too.
But they don't want you to know that, and most people are too lazy to read it, so they'll listen to the press release and they'll hear the governor's news clip, the soundbite, where it says no gatherings over 10 people or 200 people or whatever it was. It depends on where you're at. And they go, oh, well, we can't meet, because they won't look at the fine print, and the government is not going to tell you the fine print because they don't want you to know. So your ignorance keeps you in line with what they want your behavior to be, because you are uninformed, because you're too lazy to actually read it. And when you read it, the church has had every right in the world to meet, because it's, and on top of it, the lawyers that inform the governors on how to write their decree, they knew or know that directive would be unconstitutional if they didn't put the caveat in there. So they put it in there, they don't tell you about it, and then you're screaming that the government's depriving you of your rights, and that's on you because you're not reading the document. You're just taking, again, we're too lazy. We listen to press releases, we listen to sound bites on the news. And if you don't trust government to begin with, why aren't you taking the time to read the thing yourself?
Mm-hmm.
It's right there. But people they just do not do that. And at some point, that's on us, because they're playing us like a fiddle. And they're not doing anything wrong. They're just not disclosing all the information. They're making you actually find your freedoms or exercise your freedoms yourself. They're not going to do it for you. They're influencing you by leaving out important information so that you think one thing and behave exactly the way they want you to behave. And if they do get hauled into court, they're going to say, well, wait a minute, see, we never told you that we were going to violate your constitutional rights. Case dismissed.
Yeah, that's just it. See, that's what they protect themselves. Now, I want to go to Trump's tweet here, what he said, because this is something that we need to talk about. Nope, this is the one I showed you. I posted a while back. It was on April 5th. The Paycheck Protection Program is up and running. The program is open to nonprofits as well. So banks, be sure to sign up our great religious and veteran organizations that need help. Let's talk about these. Now, notice he didn't say churches there. Mm-hmm. These guys know exactly what they're doing. I'm sorry, but these politicians, they know exactly what they're doing. But what he's saying here is actually right. Because they're not churches, they're religious organizations. That's how the government sees them. That's my point.
Well, that's how the churches have manifested themselves.
Right.
See, so it's actually the opposite. Again, I think it was you. It was you, someone. I think it was you, but that posted the verse where the children of the world are wiser than the children.
That
of
was
light.
me. Yep.
Yeah, and that's 100% correct. I just gave an example of one, just in the decrees, right? We're not reading. So they say one thing, which is generally true. They don't tell you the fine print, you fall for it. Then you start screaming that you're being deprived of your rights and no such thing is actually happening. You just think that. So that's on us because we're not reading. And it's the same thing with 501c3. And I've been blowing this horn for at least 25 years now. And again, like I said earlier, I have come up in the tinfoil brigade. And it actually, my tinfoil hat led me to the church that I'm at now. Because it was unregistered. It wasn't registered with the government. And I didn't know anything about it. All I knew was that's cool. And, in my youth, that's cool. It's rebellious. We'll show them we're Americans. We got our rights, whatever. I didn't know. I didn't have a clue really what I was getting myself into, but having gotten myself into it, time goes by and you learn. Mm-hmm. And so there's something to this idea of 501c3. There are chains attached to being a 501c3 corporation or a 508 unassociated an unassociated corporation, or what do they call that?
Yep, an unassociated corporation. Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
So those are the IRS codes. 501c3,
508 churches. Yep.
Yep. So there's strings attached to that stuff. And this is why, and there's been numerous churches sued and have had their tax exemption taken away because they were corporations. Lester Roloff was one of the first ones to learn that lesson. As a matter of fact, I've got a booklet right here that I'll hold up that people can maybe see. I'll stick it close to the camera, but it says, "Should churches be incorporated?" Don Boys, PhD. Don Boys was a state congressman from Indiana. And he wrote this. He put this thing together, and he's got a section in here. This is one of my favorite go-tos on this subject because he did an exhaustive writing on this that any layman can understand. And he brings all these examples in here, and one of them was Lester Roloff and a couple of other guys. Mm-hmm. I've got so many things highlighted here. Might take me a minute to actually find the Lester Roloff example, but Lester Roloff and like Ed Sullivan in Nebraska, Bob Jones University, um, these organizations were the first to learn the hard way that incorporation is what got them in trouble in the first place. Because when you incorporate, you become a legal entity, a creature of the state. A corporation is a creature of the state, right? And this is why, if you're wondering where I'm going with this, I'm not trying to convince anybody of anything. I'm not trying to tell you to unincorporate. I'm not trying to tell you to attack your pastor because you are incorporated. I'm not asking you to do anything except one thing: learn, examine, contemplate, and contrast it with what you're going through right now. And if you do that, I think that you will see there's at least a finger hold of enough of information for you to get a grip and see that there are traps involved with being a 501c3 corporate church, because there just are.
Absolutely.
And just by nature, a corporation is a creature of the state. And I thought there was separation of church and state in this country, and there is, but there isn't separation between corporation and state, is there? No,
Nope.
There's not. So why do you think the IRS gets to look at your books whenever they want to look at them? Why do you have to keep books for the state? Why do you have business meetings? Why do you have an elected deacon board? A board, not deacons. Deacons are in the Bible, right? But deacon boards. You have business meetings. They are actually operating on behalf of the corporation to make sure the corporation is in harmony with the state laws. And that's why you have business meetings. You have to. That's part of the Constitution of your church. Why are you submitting Constitution to the government entity? Why do they know anything about you? Why do they even know your name? That's because you incorporated. So when you incorporate, you become a creature of the state. You become a tangible thing. There's a common example that I use often in trying to make this point simple for people to understand. And one of the examples that I use is an example of a family reunion, right? So if I have a family reunion over at my house and I invite all my family together and we're meeting at my house, and a neighbor comes over because he sees we're playing volleyball or whatever they want to play, they start playing volleyball and they break their leg. Okay, well, they want to sue because they don't have any medical insurance. So they want to sue. Can they sue the family reunion? Can they haul the Ickes family reunion into court?
No.
No, it doesn't exist. It's not a thing. They'd have to sue me because it's my house. They'd have to sue me as a person. It's my house where they broke their leg. They'd have to sue me, not the family reunion, but me. See? So then I would have to pay the medical bills. So if you're a corporation, though, you are a thing, and you can be hauled into court. And churches incorporate for several benefits, and one of them is limited liability. So if in the case of the family reunion, if it were incorporated, then someone breaks their leg on corporate property, then they can't sue me in my individual capacity. They have to sue the family reunion. They sue the corporation. If the corporation goes bankrupt, it goes bankrupt, but I don't get punished for that because it's not me they're taking to court. So preachers get limited liability. They get protection from the state. Is there anything wrong with that? I'm not saying there is anything wrong with it. I'm only pointing that out to tell you there are strings attached. You're getting benefits from the state. Well, to get that, you exchange something with them, and that is to get tax exemption, to get limited liability, and there's several other things. Dr. Boyce covers that in this booklet here, by the way. He covers all of that I mentioned there. There's a D. James Kennedy example in here too. I'm trying to find the Lester Roloff one explicitly because I think everyone would be interested to see how that thing went down.
Oh yeah, the Lester Roloff issue was the statement was interesting. I read that when I studied this years ago. When I studied it years ago, I thought Lester Roloff was such a hero and such a good man, but he made a lot of mistakes, and the court really came down pretty hard on him for the mistakes that he made, and they're right
They are
because
right.
they're absolutely
And
right about it. And I have a problem with these. While you're looking for that, I'll keep talking here. I have a problem with these religious organizations that are 501c3 that are churches. Let's just call them Second Baptist Church Incorporated, right? Let's call them that. They're incorporated, and now these churches, brother, they are going to by the way, I know somebody in the banking industry, and right now these loans are being all over the country. There are churches all over the nation right now. There are churches, incorporated 501c3 churches that are accepting payroll money
right.
from the federal government to keep them going in their corporations. So they are accepting. So the United States government is funding religious corporations, which are churches, by the way. Well, they call themselves churches anyway, but legally, in the eyes of the government, they're religious corporations that call themselves churches. They are being now funded by the federal government, and their payroll is being funded by the federal government.
Exactly. And see, these are things that we could get deeper into if we had to, and we could, but that's for another discussion because it's too technical and nobody's going to listen to that stuff for a very long period of time,
Right.
Even a short period of time. I've had to look into this stuff just because if I'm going to talk about it, I need to know what I'm talking about. But people need to understand that how can a church even qualify for payroll? That should prompt a question in your head. Why does payroll? Why does my church have payroll? What do you mean payroll? Churches don't, where's that in scripture?
Right.
There's no payroll. There's no employees
No.
in the scripture. Nobody works for the church.
Mm-mm.
I mean, as an employee, they don't. As a minister, they do. As
Right.
a pastor, they do. They aren't paid wages.
Mm-mm.
They're given gifts.
Exactly.
Right. And those gifts have never been taxable. They're non-taxable. They always have been. But now we're qualifying for tax exemption. Well, there's chains involved with that. Right. And no, I'm not pointing this out to point fingers at anybody. This is not me saying I'm right and you're wrong. I'm not. That's not my motive. That's not my intent. I'm just saying this COVID-19 situation with what Jason just pointed out, the payroll thing and the loans, the stay-at-home orders, these things there should be red flags flying all over the place right now for us Christians as to why do they even think, why did Bill de Blasio think that he could even say out loud to pastors and churches in New York City that if you fail to follow these orders, I will shut you down permanently.
And why was he able to say that, Brother Ickes?
Well, the first thing that all my Christian friends are saying is he can't do that. Well, my response to that is you don't know that he can't do that. Why do you not know that he can't do that? Because he knows something you don't know. And what he knows is that he's talking about corporations, which are churches of the state. They are formed as creatures of the state, and part of their duty is to perform a public service. One of the things I'll ask you, I've got the forms. I've got IRS forms, right? 1023, application for recognition of exemption. They ask questions in these IRS forms of these corporations. One of them is, are you open to the public? They're asking me that on purpose. They're assuming you perform a public duty, like some churches they're open. So, right, they're doing some moral teaching to the community, things like that, right? So the state has a vested interest in these entities providing a public service. So if you say you're not open to the public, what church is open to the public? That's another discussion. I'd love to have a show all about that. I'd have that all day long. Church isn't open to a public. We're supposed to come out from among them and be separate. The church is supposed to be for the sheep not the zoo.
Hey, we can do that next week if you got time, brother.
That's all I got is time. Probably at least 2 more weeks before they open things up for us.
Well,
in
I'll
the
bring
auto
you back
industry.
next week and we can talk about that very subject. Then.
Make a note of that because I'll forget it.
I will. I will.
Yeah, so yeah, I'd love to talk about that. That's not okay. So anyway, before I go off on the rabbit trail, we'll shoot that rabbit later. But there's because you provide a public service that the state has a vested interest in you performing, they give you tax exemption, right? Well, because you perform a public service as part of your incorporation status, you have to follow all local, state, and federal laws and follow all public policy. Now, this is where COVID-19 comes in.
Well, can I stop you there just for a
Yeah,
second?
stop me.
Let me just stop you for a second.
I'll follow you.
Because everybody thinks that that's going to have to do with the sodomites. But I want you to look closely at this issue because all of our brethren were like, yep, even David Gibbs admitted if they come after us anywhere, they're going to come after us concerning the public policy. I have that on my record somewhere on my computer. I have a snapshot of him saying that somewhere where he said they're going to come at us with the public policy and it's going to be against the homosexuals and that's what they're going to do. But look at this closely, brother. This issue right here is public policy.
Absolutely.
And that's why I'm saying to you that as Old Paths Baptist Church is not a corporation, is not a 501c3, if anybody could fight this and be like, you know what? I didn't take your exemption. I didn't take your money. I didn't sign your papers. I didn't agree to anything like that. We're not a public assembly. We're a private assembly. If I wanted to, I'd be the one to fight that in that sense. And I'm not saying that proud because have you noticed something? We've been home for 2 weeks broadcasting. Why? Because I'm not trying to flex my muscles and hold out my chest. I'm not trying to do that. That's not the point of all this. But I'm saying that, you know what, it could be though. It could be if I thought it was right to do, I would have already done it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now let's go back to your point here. You're talking about they are religious organizations.
Right, and they perform a public policy, and because of that, a public service. So therefore, as a creature of the state, First Baptist Church Inc., that's what you are. That whatever the name of your church is, just put Inc. at the back of it.
Right.
Right. That's who you are. You have formed yourself into a tangible thing that can sue and be sued. Right. Churches incorporate. Not just for tax exemption, not just for limited liability, but they incorporate so they can borrow money.
Exactly.
Right? So they can build buildings. Now, do I want to borrow $350,000 to build a church building and have my name on the hook? No way. If we form a corporation, the corporation can borrow the $350,000. And then if we don't make our payments, oh, well, the corporation goes bankrupt, but my bank account's not touched. I'm safe. It's the corporation that goes bankrupt, not me, right?
Right.
So these are red flags. These things should be popping up in your head to at least get you to say, okay, I know that David Ickes guy. He's a nutcase, but you know, there's a little something there that's got me bothered. If that's what happens here today, then I think I'll be satisfied. I'll have done my job, right?
Well, and while you're on that,
in my opinion, I'm just trying to get people to think. I'm not trying to convince you of anything other than just get you to pause for a second. Look at what's happening right now. Why are the politicians saying things that are clearly unconstitutional? Because they're not unconstitutional.
Exactly.
Because they have chained themselves willingly. Now, the pastors that are hearing this right now, they just inherited a corporation. They didn't, and even if they started it themselves, they were just following the people that they respect. Totally get it. Again, I'm not pointing a finger of blame. We are where we are. Let's deal with where we are. We're here, right? How we got here is irrelevant. Right. Where are we going to go from here? The next time something like this happens, it's going to be worse. So if you're not waking up to what's going on, not what will wake you up. I honestly, because we've been talking about law, we've been talking about medicine. If we want to talk Bible now, I think God is giving us a warning. He's sending us right now a message to wake up. Are we going to listen to it or not? Are we paying attention? What is it going to take for preachers to wake up to this incorporation thing. I've been praying for a day that people would wake up on this, and I'm really hoping that this helps a lot of people wake up to that. This whole thing. Churches are not supposed to be entangled with the state in any way, shape, or form. If that means you can't buy a building, you don't buy a building. If that means you can't build that gym, oh well, you don't have a gym. You don't find any of that in the Bible anyway. So again, that we'll talk about that next week, what the church is even for in the first place. We've gone so far afield, it's ridiculous. We're serving the world more than we are even serving our own people. And that should be the shame point right there. But we'll talk about that next week. So, what I'm saying is, my prayer is that the brethren will at least give this crazy idea from this crazy preacher a second thought, look into it a little bit more, let it mull around in the back of their head for a little while, pray about it, ask some questions, think about it. And then that would be great, because it's not my job to convince anybody anything. That's going to have to be the Lord anyway. But, so what I'm saying is, the government officials, they understand what you are when you don't understand what you are.
Right.
And that's why they can say things like, I'll shut you down permanently. Or that's why they think they can go to your church and arrest the preacher for having a gathering, right? The first thing we say is, oh no, they're violating the Constitution. This is tyranny. No, it's not. You did that to yourself. You just don't know it. That's on you. That's not on them. You're the one that signed the paperwork. And here's one of the kickers. This hit me a long time ago, but I think it's important. When you sign the paperwork, you are agreeing to abide by all local, state, federal laws and public policy when you agree to incorporate. So I've heard, I don't know how many preachers now tell me over and again, when they tell me what I can preach, then that's when I'll bow out, right? Well, that puts you in a precarious position, because you either lied to me when you said that you would do something about it when they tell you what to preach, or you lied when you filled out the form saying you would follow public policy and all the laws. Because when they change public policy and the laws to tell you what you can and can't preach, it already happens with political issues. You can't endorse anybody. When you do that, you've already agreed to do that. Mm-hmm. Because that applies to anything they change in the future. You agreed to that. So you either lied when you filled out the incorporation papers, or you're lying when you say that you'll fight them when they tell you what you can't preach. Either way, you're lying. Who does that to themselves on purpose? Not a wise person. So having said that, I've been there. Other men have been there. They've already learned the lesson. So this, again, that's not a condemnation. I'm not saying that as condemnation. I'm nobody anyways. So everybody listening to this here is a better preacher and pastor than I'll ever be. I get that. But the point is, I want you to think about this, right? That's all I want you to do, is think about it. These things are happening for a reason, and we need to listen, or we're headed off a cliff. And I think everyone owes it to themselves to at least give this issue an audience, because I think we're getting a really good hint through this COVID-19 thing of what's going on, and we've put ourselves in a bad position. And I did find the Lester Roloff thing, but I don't want to jump into that unless if you want follow up on what we've been already saying.
No, you go right ahead. I mean, this gives a perfect example.
Are we going too long? I mean, I don't know what your audience is used to.
I've gone over, but they're used to it. I'm 2 hours in right now, and we could pick it up. Then we
should probably let them go. We're going to lose their attention span. I don't know what are they voting to keep going, or
no? They're fine. They're fine. They'll stay on as long as they can. If I stayed on here for 4 hours, they'd do that. If they didn't have anything to do, and they're stuck at home right now. Remember, brother.
If you have to, maybe you can edit this into 2 parts, so when people share it or something.
We could put time markers on it as far as what we talk about or whatever. Luke can look at doing that, but
because I understand people have lives too. I mean,
well, right now they don't. They're
true.
Right now their life consists of being home. That's
mm-hmm. So let me at least share the Lester Roloff thing.
Yeah, and let me tell you why this is important. Okay. Lester Roloff was a fire-breathing preacher, probably one of the best preachers of his time. He stood against the tyranny of government that was wrong. He preached. He had orphanages. He did all kinds of things, good, solid Bible preacher, preached repentance, faith. helped probably millions of people in his whole lifetime. I'm
Absolutely.
sure.
Absolutely. But he wasn't a lawyer. And so that's where
Right.
we get ourselves in troubles. We can't be experts on everything, right? So, we're leaning on people to lead us in areas where we're not experts at. We're supposed to be experts in scripture. And I would imagine everyone listening is there. If you're a pastor, you should be. So, but Lester Roloff learned a hard lesson, and we can learn a lesson from what he learned, right? So I'll read some of this here. It doesn't go on very too long here, but I'm going to read the case of People's Baptist Church of Corpus Christi, Texas. So this is what Don Boys says here. He writes out about this incident here. He says, this is a perfect example of the product of church incorporation. The late Lester Roloff founded homes to reclaim and regenerate boys, girls, alcoholics, etc., which saved Texas hundreds of thousands of dollars while he pastored People's Baptist Church. The outstanding success of the homes was an acute embarrassment to the pompous politicians and bungling bureaucrats in Texas. So for years, the state tried to force People's Baptist Church to license their homes. However, Brother Roloff rightly believed that no church should ever be licensed by the state. So he had the premise right. No church should ever be licensed by the state. Lester Roloff, his premise was correct. However, Brother Roloff rightly believed that no church should ever be licensed by the state. The petty state officials huffed and puffed and threatened to blow down his house. Given the ability of politicians and bureaucrats to develop hot air instantly, they could no doubt accomplish the task. The state decided to close the homes if the church did not bow to state control and accept a state license. Now, please be aware that there was never any question as to the quality of work being done. All right, so people need to understand that the state wasn't questioning whether there was any abuse or neglect in these homes. That was that's not part of this. It was just a matter of control. Who will control the church, God or government? That was the issue. So the case finally ended up in the Texas Supreme Court, and the church lost the case. All the children were moved out of state to escape the clutches of state welfare workers. So they moved them. They moved them out of state. So the welfare workers and the CPW or whatever you call them, Child Protective Service, CPS, whatever, could get their hands on the kids. So the court decision dated December 19th, 1984 reads, quote, the issue is not whether People's Baptist is performing a service that falls beneath licensing standards. The three homes have a good record of high quality service. People's Baptist, from this record, could no doubt easily satisfy licensing requirements, but has chosen not to do so, unquote. So the issue was not safety of children, nor was the church trying to hide behind their convictions so they wouldn't have to apply for a license they could not get. So the state wasn't trying to shut them down. They were just trying to put them underneath their control.
Yep.
The legal decision continued, quote, the People's Baptist Church, reasons that licensing interferes with religious freedom, People's Baptist does not, however, resist all licensing to do business in Texas. In fact, it does its business and service as a corporation under the corporate name of Corpus Christi People's Baptist Church Incorporated, and it complies with all business licensing requirements, unquote. And he's got a footnote here for where he got this right out of the case documents. So if you were following along with what I was saying, okay, here they're having this battle. The state wants the church to license their children's homes. Lester Roloff says, no way, we're not licensing the children's homes. We don't believe in licensing the church. And then the state says, what do you mean you don't believe in licensing? The church is licensed. The church is incorporated. And that was the aha moment where Lester Roloff realized what hook he had put in himself. The government didn't do this to Lester Roloff. Lester Roloff did this to himself inadvertently. Wasn't intentionally, of course, but ignorantly. He did what the lawyers were telling him to do, and the lawyers got him in trouble because they told him to incorporate his church, and he did. So in other words, you cannot go into a church or into a courtroom and say you're against licensing when you're licensed already, when the church that runs those ministries is already corporated. You can't argue that. You can't say I'm against it, but I'm doing it at the same time. You see what I'm saying? This is where he got caught.
Yep.
So, what a tragedy. The court refused their argument that their convictions would be violated if they took a license for their children's ministry. After all, they were already licensed as an incorporated church. People's Baptist pled that to be licensed would violate the Establishment Clause of the United States Constitution's First Amendment because it would create, quote unquote, excessive entanglement between the church and state, which is true, it would.
Mm-hmm.
It is my contention that they should not have been in a position to plead no jurisdiction. The state has no jurisdiction to demand a license of a church. However, People's Baptist had willingly placed itself under state control by becoming incorporated, hence it could not plead no jurisdiction. So the People's Baptist Church hemorrhaged from a self-inflicted wound. The U.S. Supreme Court denied their hearing, and the impressive homes sit empty tonight. So, and I could go on. There's more quotes and things like that, but you get the gist of it. It's all right there.
Mm-hmm.
This was one of the biggest cases that finally got people to realize what actually is going on, and it was done inadvertently.
Yes.
Okay. When you incorporate your church, you have just now created yourself into a tangible thing that can be grabbed and hauled into court, unlike a family reunion, in my earlier illustration. If a church just meets as a family reunion, isn't it a family reunion? Aren't we all members of one family there, one body, right? It's a family gathering. 2 Corinthians chapter 6 explicitly calls it that. And I will be a father unto you, and you will be my sons and my daughters. When you come out from among them, that will be brought up next week when we talk about that. But the church is a family reunion, right? So you can't haul a family reunion into court.
Nope.
But you can haul a corporation into court. So don't corporate. And then you can't be hauled into court. And then you have your freedoms. Now, I'm not saying you could run children's homes. I'm not saying any of that. That's all
that's
other
not
stuff.
A church.
But that's not what the church is for.
Right.
Parents are supposed to raise their children. I get it. These are maybe orphans. These are people that come out of bad home. Totally get it. Understand it. That's a totally different discussion. But it's not the primary purpose of the church, see? And so, again, we get these desires to do things that we're not even called to do in the first place. They're good things. The intentions are pure. It's charity to the max, love, kindness, goodness to people, all those things. It's all good. But that's not what the church is primarily for. It can do some of those things, but that's not what it was called to do. So we get so busy. I'll give another example real quick. It's like this, like the Lord tells us, I use this example in our Bible Institute. Okay, so dad's getting ready to go away, right? He rises, goes away, but he's coming back someday, right? So you're a kid, dad says, hey, I'm going to work. I'm coming back later. What I want you to do is I want you to cut the grass. So the grass better be cut before I get home. I'm giving you, some things I want you to do while I'm gone. I want you to cut the grass. So I'm the son. I get this wise idea. I'm going to make my dad happy. I'm going to paint the house. I'm going to build a fence. I'm going to put a new roof on the house. I'm going to clean all the windows. I'm going to trim the hedges, and I'm working. I'm working hard. I'm getting blisters on my hands. I'm sweating. I'm putting my back into it. I'm sore. I'm hungry. I'm thirsty. I'm giving it all. I'm giving it everything I have to please my dad. My dad comes home and he looks at the grass. And he looks at me sternly and he says, I thought I told you to cut the grass. Dad, but look what I did. I painted the house. I trimmed the hedges. I look at all this work I did. Mm-hmm. Son, if you had just done what I asked you to do and you did that on top of that, your rewards would be many. But you didn't do what I asked you to do. There was a reason why I wanted you to cut the grass. And now that reason is going to be left unfulfilled because you didn't do what I asked you to do. I'm disappointed. This is what we're doing as churches. We're doing everything except what God told us to do, which is to feed the flock. And instead, we're 24/7 evangelists. We're feeding sheep. I mean, not sheep. We're feeding goats. We're feeding snakes. We're feeding wolves. We got the whole zoo in the backyard. We're doing all these things with good intentions, but it's not what Dad told us to do. Exactly. So how do you think he's going to look at you when he gets home? You see what I'm saying? There's a lesson in all that we'll discuss next week. But this incorporation thing, why? What are we doing? It just doesn't make any sense to me. Sure, you're never going to get to the size of 2,000 people. You're never going to make a ton of money. But who cares? That's not. You know what I mean? That's not what this is all about. It never has been about that. You just do what you're told to do, the way you were told to do it, and then let the Lord sort it all out in the end. Because
Amen.
we're supposed to be pleasing him in the end, not doing all these things to get the accolades of men, even if all our intentions are great, right? So this incorporation thing is something people need to pay attention to. I've got a ton of literature here. I've got legal definitions of a corporation. I've got all this stuff right here. I've got this this mailing that I got from this group called Pastors Beware, Urgent New IRS laws effective now. And it was this thing that I was mailed.
Wow.
And it's this legal seminar about how to line up with the IRS and how to make sure you have all your ducks in a row so you don't end up in jail. You know, it gives you like this little list. I'll read it real quickly. 21 new IRS rules you must know now. New IRS forms to be filed by churches and pastors. How to avoid the IRS $250,000 penalty. New law on how to set the pastor's salary. Why the IRS is targeting pastors and ministers for IRS
What
audits.
a mess.
How to set up the new IRS love offering program. How
Whoa,
to stop the
what's
IRS
up with that one?
Yes, I'm saying this is stuff you're going to learn at this seminar, right? How to stop the IRS from locking down your checkbook. Why the IRS still requires canceled checks. Why church auxiliary accounts are illegal. How to protect yourself if a trustee makes a deal with the IRS. How to know for sure if your check writer, clerk, CPA, or lawyer has your church in compliance. Who can now sign checks and who can write checks. The new red flag law, what the IRS requires for a legal pastor's aid fund account, what the IRS requires if you are going to pay for the pastor's cell phone, how to maximize the pastor's housing allowance. All 14 items must be included. New IRS forms for guest
Man,
speakers.
that's a lot of work, brother.
Dude, I mean, well, these are all links in the chain that you hooked yourself to when you incorporated.
Exactly.
And these guys are telling you how to operate while you're chained to the government so that chain don't get yanked. And pastors are doing that all over the country.
So you got Trump giving the religious organizations the money, right? And they're standing in line waiting for the daddy, the federal government, to give them everything they want. And that's not Trump's fault, by the way. That's their fault. They're the ones that it's been going on a lot longer than he's been around. But anyway, so. And then I did a broadcast with Pastor Greg Dixon before he passed away a few years ago. Yeah. And I did a broadcast with him, and he was talking about that, how he said Trump didn't do away with the Johnson Amendment. It's not done. It didn't lose its teeth. Mm-hmm. He signed an executive order, but that doesn't change the actual law. That doesn't change the Johnson Amendment. Executive orders don't change that.
And even if it did, since when does the church need the government to give them permission to do anything in the first place?
Exactly.
You see what I mean?
Exactly.
So the fact that he even had to do that should have been a red flag, but was anybody looking for it? No.
Right.
Why? Because the money's coming in. They still got their limited liability. Everything's good. They're safe. They're protected. It's like this. If you think about it, I've had several pastors, contemplate this stuff, and we've had discussions about it, and they'll tell me, well, it doesn't matter if you're unregistered or you're not. They're still going to do the same thing to the unregistered churches that they're going to do to the registered ones. Okay, let's say that's true. Okay, right? Government's going to do what they want to do, and they've railroaded people in the past. I totally get it. I understand the question, but it doesn't justify the point. Nope. Because here's the difference. If they persecute a church for being unregistered, that preacher and those elders in that church can stand before the Lord having done everything right and suffered persecution for it. The other cannot, because they're suffering of their own doing. So let's just accept that argument, even though I don't think that's true. I think you've got legal standing that a corporation does not. But let's just say that that's true for the sake of argument. I want to stand before the Lord, not having entangled the bride into the chains of the neighbor. In other words, what bride whose husband is away cozies up to the neighbor and asks him for benefits? And what husband is going to be okay with that? Yeah, I mean, Pastor, you know the answer to that. You wouldn't allow that for a split second with your marriage, but how come you allow that with the Lord's marriage? That doesn't make any sense to me. So you see what I'm saying? I mean, am I making sense or am I being extreme here? I
No,
mean,
I think you're making
it's
complete
like,
sense to me.
it's like, guys, there's a lot there to think about. And if I can get you to think that, then that's the best I can do.
Here's what De Blasio said. He said, "So I want to say to all those who are preparing the potential of religious services this weekend. This was a few weeks ago. If you go to your synagogue, if you go to your church and attempt to hold services after having been told so often not to, our enforcement agents will have no choice but to shut down those services," he said. De Blasio does not belong to any religious denomination. In a question and answer session on Reddit 6 years ago, anyway, he said he didn't. In his briefing on Friday, he said he would be deploying the city's police, fire, and building departments to make sure religious services did not take place in the city. If congregations did not discontinue holding services in buildings which the city once they had been warned, his government would be potentially closing the building permanently.
Yeah, why does he think he can say that?
Because they're corporations.
Exactly, but yet everyone's looking at him like he's saying some things unconstitutional. He's talking like a tyrant. No, he's not. He's talking about yanking the chain of the people that are on his chain. They
Right.
put themselves there.
A vast majority of house
That's
worship.
not on him.
Right. A vast majority of houses of worship have stopped their traditional worship service, said de Blasio. If they could, they went online, they went on the radio, whatever they could do. But they've stopped gathering people, understanding the nature of the crisis. No faith tradition endorses anything that endangers the members of the faith, he said. So the New York, well, first of all, has he ever met the Mormons? Anyway, but or Muslims, has he ever met him? Anyway, but no faith tradition endorses anything that endangers. No faith tradition does that. So the NYPD fire department, buildings department, everyone has been instructed that if they see worship services going on, they will go to the officials of that congregation. They'll inform them they need to stop the services and disperse. If that doesn't happen, they will take additional action up to the point of fines and potentially closing the building permanently. Well, that's fine because see, I don't need a building to meet. I can meet at my house, right?
Exactly.
If I'm not a corporation, I don't have a big 501c3. If I don't have, we have a meeting house here, but it's not in the church's name.
Right.
The church doesn't exist.
Right, because it can't.
No.
It can't rent it because it can't be held liable for the rent.
Right.
It doesn't.
Exactly.
It's not anything that can be sued.
It's not a legal entity.
Correct. It doesn't exist. It's invisible, which is it's a spiritual organism, and that's what the church is. So I've got even some more there from Exodus. If you were to look at Exodus chapter what is it 8? I was just looking at it here a second ago. Exodus chapter 8, right from the beginning, the church in the wilderness, the first church, the church in the wilderness. Right? You had Moses imploring Pharaoh to let my people go, right? And in the middle of this, in Acts chapter 8, he says in verse 20, and the Lord said unto Moses, rise up early in the morning and stand before Pharaoh. Lo, he cometh forth to the water, and say unto him, thus saith the Lord, let my people go, that they may serve me. Else, if thou wilt not let my people go, behold, I will send swarms of flies upon thee, and upon thy servants, and upon thy people, and into thy houses. And the houses of the Egyptians shall be full of swarms of flies, and also the ground whereon they are. And now get this. And I will sever, split up. I will sever in that day the land of Goshen, in which my people dwell, that no swarms of flies shall be there, to the end thou mayest know that I am the Lord in the midst of the earth. Verse 23, and I will put what? And I will put a division between my people and thy people. Tomorrow shall this sign be. And the Lord did so. And there came a grievous swarm of flies into the house of Pharaoh, and into his servants' houses, and into all the land of Egypt. The land was corrupted by reason of the swarm of flies. And Pharaoh called for Moses and Aaron and said, go ye sacrifice to your God in the land. Okay, now here's Pharaoh. Here's the government. The government's like, all right, uncle, I give up. Okay, go ahead and sacrifice, but do it here. In verse 26, and Moses said, "It is not meet so to do, for we shall sacrifice the abomination of the Egyptians to the Lord our God. Lo, shall we sacrifice the abomination of the Egyptians before their eyes, and will they not stone us? We will go 3 days journey into the wilderness and sacrifice to the Lord our God, as he shall command us." And Pharaoh said, "I will let you go, that you may sacrifice to the Lord your God in the wilderness, only you shall not go very far away and treat for me." So here's the government trying to maintain control of the church, the very first church. Moses is like, "No, we have to separate from you. What we do is an abomination to you guys. You're not going to like what we stand for. You're not going to like what we do. You're going to despise what we're doing. We have to be separated from you." And Pharaoh is like, "Well, you can do that, but do it right here." Why? Because he wants to keep his eyes on them. Right? You can do that, but don't go very far. Why? Because he wants to control them. Right? It's about control. So here we are, 3,500 years later or whatever, and we're actually saying, "Sure, yeah, we'll do it right here. No big deal. That's what you want, Pharaoh? All right, that's cool. You can protect us? Yeah, that's good. We'll hang out right here. We're not going to separate ourselves. We're not going to go where the Lord wants us to go. We're not going to stay where he wants us to be. We'll do it right here. You can keep your eyes on us and all that. Make sure we're doing everything."
I got another one for you.
Sure,
I got another one for you. Okay, you ready?
Amen.
So we need to now we've taken on that side of it. Now we need to go to the other side of it. Since all my exes live in Texas, all my ex-church members anyway, but we won't go down that road. But listen, so here's what I want to say. Now the governor over in Texas makes his decree, and everybody's doing jumping jacks and is happy and is just like they're going through the roof because they're like, guess what? Governor Abbott said churches are essential. So now churches are essential and it's legal for them to open, and everybody's all excited, and Texas is like, yeah, Texas. Yeah, Texas. And they got their big old 300-gallon hat on, and they're walking around in their big old boots and their Wrangler jeans, and they're all excited about it. But let me tell you something. He just did the exact same thing the other governor did. He's telling you that he has the authority to tell you that your church is essential or not.
Right. He basically determined whether you were essential or not the Lord. He did. Right, and there's a distinction there. And why does he have the right to do that? What gives him the right to declare you essential or not? Where does he get that power from? You gave it to him. That's how.
Right.
Why do you think he can shut down?
All
why do you think he can shut down restaurants?
Right.
They shut down restaurants, right?
Because they're corporations and they have the authority to.
Exactly. So we've given people enough food for thought, I think, to at least get the wheels turning. And the next time we get back online together, or whatever, maybe we can focus on, like we said, the purpose of the assembly in the first place.
Sure, absolutely.
Because we're build the building and, washing the windows, and we're not cutting the grass. Let's figure out what it is Dad wants us to do, and let's focus on that. Yep. And then everything becomes real simple at that point.
Yep. It does, and we'll close up here. And that's what I think is interesting, though, because you can't ignore the flip side of that, where people are so excited about that. Well, what you're telling me is, if the decree of Caesar is a good one, you're willing to bow to that. Okay, I'm sitting here in Minnesota, and I have to make a decision. If I believe it's right for me, or for our church as a pastor, if I believe it's right for us to meet regardless of the decree that Caesar has put out, right? If I believe it's right and the Lord wants us to, then I have to do that no matter if the governor deems it essential or non-essential. If he said tomorrow churches were essential, that probably shouldn't change my decision.
Correct. And that just brings us full circle, which is why this is a perfect place to end this. I apologize for this being long, but to your listeners, sorry for taking this so long, but these are important things. We're all sitting at home. These are important, but it brings us full circle because, again, this gets me right back to my original point. We need to operate from a position of wisdom, not compulsion.
Yeah.
So in Texas and in Minnesota and in Detroit, we're all doing the same thing. exercising wisdom, but your decision might be totally different than mine.
Exactly.
But it's still coming from the same source. So when the governor says churches are essential, that doesn't even mean anything to you.
No.
Because even if he didn't, we weren't going to meet anyway, because we're in the middle of the nuclear pot. We're in the radiation zone here.
Right.
So it doesn't matter what the governor says. We're not operating this way because the governor said we had to operate this way. We're just exercising wisdom based on our real circumstances. And the Texans should have been saying to themselves, well, that's why we're doing that. It was wise for us not to meet. Or we were going to meet this Sunday anyway because it was wise for us to. In other words, the governor's decisions would be irrelevant if you're working from the proper motive.
Exactly.
And I think that's just a good and wise way to operate. Every local church has decisions.
Whoa, Luke had your picture up here for a reason like that. I just moved it. I made you look funny. That's okay.
That's okay. It's easy to do.
Yeah. Amen. Anyway, I'm just kidding. But all right, brother. Well, that sounds good. We'll go ahead and let you go for now. And I appreciate you spending so much time with us here today, and look forward to soon when we can
next time.
meet again.
Like I said, I'm off, so you just name the day and the time, and we'll get back together.
Good. Let's plan for next Wednesday.
That's fine.
Let's plan for the same here, and
Okay.
We'll do it on Wednesdays here for a while until you're.
And to your listeners, I'd just like to say thanks for tuning in and listening and having long suffering and listening to this long discussion. But I think you can understand it's kind of a strange time in America right now. It's something none of us have seen. My 80-year-old father has never seen this. I've talked to him about it. He's never seen it either. So, thanks for listening in, and we pray for us, and we'll be praying for you.
Appreciate it, brother. God bless you all. Have a good night.
Yep. God bless you, Jason.
Yep.
Take care, buddy.
Take care.
All right.
Yep. Bye.
Bye.
All right, everybody. Hey, I'll be back on here tonight at well, tonight is like 2.5 hours. So in about 2.5 hours, I'll be live again on YouTube. I'll be preaching a message to you out of Colossians chapter 3 tonight. So hang in there if you have time, if you're able to. What's that? Hang in there if you have time and you're able to. We'll be on live tonight, and you pray for us, pray for all our needs, for the Lord to provide for us during this time, and we thank God for His provision. Thank you to all of you who have given to our ministry and been a blessing to us and given to the Lord's work. We appreciate that. We're very thankful for that, and I'm thankful for some of you and all of you praying for us and all that good stuff. But we'll be back on tonight here. At about 7:15 or so Central Time tonight. All right? So 7:15 Central Time, and we'll be on tonight. You keep praying for us, and next week we'll have Brother Ickes back on, and we'll talk about some more of these issues with 501c3, with the nature of the church, and the times that we're living in. So it'll be good. You all have a good night.